My wife returned after 42 years. And the truth she revealed shattered my world. The words still echo in my mind as I stand frozen in my living room, staring at the woman in front of me. The same woman I buried in my heart more than 4 decades ago. The same woman I believed I would never see again. Time seems to slow, stretching the moment thin until it almost breaks. My chest tightens, my breath shallow, as if my body is struggling to catch up with what my eyes are seeing. I never imagined this moment. I never prepared for it. And yet, here she stands, breathing, real, carrying a past I thought was sealed forever. The silence between us is heavy, suffocating. 42 years collapse into a single heartbeat. I hear the ticking clock on the wall, loud and unforgiving, each second reminding me that this isn't a dream. My hands tremble slightly at my sides, not from fear, but from the weight of memories clawing their way back to the surface. I had lived an entire lifetime believing this chapter was closed. I had survived the pain, the unanswered questions, the quiet nights filled with regret. And now, without warning, the past has walked back into my life and knocked on my door. She stands just inside the doorway. Her posture stiff, her eyes searching my face as if she's trying to recognize the man I've become. I recognize her instantly, even though time has changed us both. There are lines where youth once lived, a heaviness behind her eyes that wasn't there before. She looks older, worn, as if life has demanded payment from her in ways I can only imagine. I don't move. I don't speak. I simply watch, my heart pounding in my chest like it's trying to escape. For 42 years, I told myself I didn't need answers. I convinced myself that survival meant letting go, accepting the silence, building a life without explanations. I raised my children alone. I worked, paid bills, sat through school events, birthdays, graduations, all without her. I learned how to live with absence. I learned how to bury questions so deep they stopped screaming. Or at least that's what I thought. She finally breaks the silence, her voice quiet, almost fragile. It sounds familiar, and yet foreign at the same time. Hearing it sends a chill through me, straight down my spine. I don't respond. I can't. My throat tightens, my jaw clenches, and I feel the weight of decades pressing against my chest. I had rehearsed this moment 1,000 times in my head over the years, imagining what I would say if she ever returned. Anger, accusations, pain. But now that she's here, all those imagined words dissolve into nothing. She takes a step forward, then stops, as if unsure whether she's allowed to cross the invisible line between us. I notice her hands shaking slightly. That small detail hits me harder than I expect. For the first time, I see something other than the woman who disappeared without explanation. I see someone carrying fear, hesitation, maybe even regret. But regret doesn't erase 42 years. It doesn't explain the nights I sat alone at the kitchen table, staring at a chair that never filled again. I gesture silently toward the chair across from me. The movement feels heavy, deliberate. She sits slowly, carefully, as if every motion carries meaning. I remain standing, needing the distance, needing the control. My home, the life I built brick by brick after she vanished, suddenly feels unfamiliar. The walls seem closer, the air thicker. This space has always been safe. Now it feels like a courtroom, where a verdict is waiting to be delivered. She looks down at her hands before finally lifting her eyes to meet mine. There's something different in her gaze, something unresolved. I can tell immediately that she didn't come back for forgiveness. She didn't come back to reminisce. She came back because there is something she needs to say. And whatever it is, it carries weight. Heavy weight. The kind that doesn't just reopen wounds. It reshapes everything you thought you knew. I didn't leave because I wanted to, she says quietly. Those 6 words land like a blow to my chest. My breath catches. My mind reels. For decades, I believed she walked away. That she chose a different life, that I wasn't enough. I had built my identity around that belief. And now in one sentence, she has cracked the foundation of everything I accepted as truth. I remain silent, my expression steady, but inside, something is breaking. I motion for her to continue. She hesitates, then nods, as if bracing herself for what comes next. I can see it in her posture, the tension, the fear, the anticipation. Whatever she's about to reveal isn't small. It's not simple. It's not something that can be said casually and forgotten. She inhales slowly, her shoulders rising and falling, and when she speaks again, her voice trembles. "There's something you were never supposed to find out," she says. "Something I was forced to hide." The room seems to tilt slightly, the world shifting under my feet. I feel a strange pressure behind my eyes, but I don't blink. I don't interrupt. I don't ask questions. I know, instinctively, that whatever truth she's about to reveal will change everything. Not just how I see her, but how I see my entire life. I stand there, 73 years old, steady on the outside, but unraveling inside, realizing that the story I've lived by for 42 years may have been a lie. And I haven't even heard the worst of it yet. She doesn't rush her words. That's the first thing I notice. Whatever she's about to say, she knows it can't be undone once spoken. Her fingers tighten together in her lap, knuckles whitening, and for a moment she closes her eyes as if summoning the courage to relive something she spent a lifetime running from. The silence stretches again, thick and deliberate, until I can almost hear my own heartbeat. "I was taken away," she finally says. "Not by force the way you're imagining, but by pressure, by fear, by people who made sure I had no choices left." My jaw tightens. 42 years of certainty begin to fracture, hairline cracks spreading through memories I thought were solid. I had replayed her disappearance endlessly over the decades, every argument, every quiet moment, every goodbye that never came. I had blamed myself more times than I could count. And now, with just a few sentences, she's rewriting the story I lived by. She tells me about the months leading up to her disappearance, about the strange phone calls that stopped when I entered the room, about people who watched from a distance, about warnings disguised as advice. She speaks carefully, like someone handling fragile glass, afraid that if she moves too fast, everything will shatter. I listen without interruption, my arms crossed loosely, my posture steady, though inside I feel like the ground is shifting. "They knew things about you," she says. "About your work, about your investments, about mistakes you didn't even know were being monitored." That makes me look at her sharply. I spent years building my career quietly, responsibly, believing I kept my life clean and contained. Hearing that someone had been watching, measuring, threatening sends a chill through my spine. She notices the change in my expression and nods slowly. "They said if I stayed," she continues, "you'd lose everything. Your career, your reputation. They said they'd make sure you never recovered." My chest tightens. I remember that year clearly now. The unexpected audit. The deal that collapsed at the last moment. The quiet warning from a colleague to step away from certain partnerships. I had chalked it up to bad luck, to timing, to life. I never imagined it was connected to her disappearance. She tells me she was given a choice. Leave quietly and disappear, or stay and watch me be destroyed piece by piece. She was young then, frightened, convinced she was protecting me. Her voice cracks when she admits she believed I would be better off hating her than knowing the truth. That belief shaped every year that followed. "I thought you'd move on," she whispers. "That you'd build a better life without me." I swallow hard. I didn't tell her about the years I spent waking up before dawn, just to sit in silence. The nights I stayed up staring at the door, convinced she might still come back. The birthdays, the holidays, the milestones she missed. I carried those alone. And now, Hearing that my suffering was never part of her intention feels like another kind of loss. She explains how she was forced to cut all contact. Letters intercepted. Messages erased. Names changed. Entire identities rebuilt. She lived under rules designed to erase her past completely. She married someone else eventually, not out of love but necessity. Survival. That marriage didn't last. Neither did the ones that followed. Running from the past, she says, never brings peace, only exhaustion. I finally sit down across from her, the distance between us shrinking physically, though emotionally it still feels vast. I study her face, searching for deception, for cracks in the story. But all I see is weariness. Regret etched deep into her expression. The kind that doesn't come from guilt alone, but from decades of unresolved truth. What changed? I ask quietly. Why now? She hesitates, then reaches into her bag and pulls out a thin folder. She places it on the table between us but doesn't open it yet. Just rests her hand on top, as if grounding herself. The people who controlled everything, she says slowly, they're gone now, exposed, investigated. Their power collapsed. My stomach drops. I've spent my life believing the past was dead and buried. Now I realize it was simply waiting. Waiting for the right moment to surface. Waiting for me to be old enough, tired enough, steady enough to finally hear the truth. There's more, she adds. Her eyes meet mine again, and this time there's something else there. Fear. Not for herself, but for me. Much more. I lean back slightly, drawing a slow breath, bracing myself. I can feel it now, the sense that everything I believed about my life, my choices, even my losses, is about to be redefined. Whatever is inside that folder isn't just an explanation, it's a reckoning. And as I look at her, sitting across from me after 42 years of absence, I realize something unsettling. Her disappearance wasn't the end of the story. It was the beginning of a lie that shaped my entire life. I don't open the folder right away. I just stare at it, resting on the table between us like a loaded weapon. For a moment, neither of us speaks. The ticking clock on the wall feels louder than before, each second marking the distance between who I thought I was and who I'm about to become. I've lived long enough to know that some truths don't just hurt. They permanently rearrange the way you see your past. She finally slides the folder toward me with trembling fingers. You deserve to know, she says quietly. Even if it breaks everything. I open it slowly. The first document stops my breath. Entirely, a birth certificate. Not mine. Not hers, but one bearing my last name. My hands stiffen as my eyes scan the page again, hoping I've misread it. I haven't. The date is clear. The location unmistakable. My name is listed as the father. My heart begins to pound so loudly I'm certain she can hear it. I had a child, she says, her voice barely above a whisper. The room tilts. I grip the edge of the table, my knuckles whitening. My mind races through decades of memory, trying to locate a space where this could exist, where a child of mine could have been born without my knowledge. 42 years of life collapse inward, folding in on themselves like a house built on sand. You. What? I managed to say. She explains that she was already pregnant when the pressure intensified. When the threats became explicit. Leaving wasn't just about protecting me anymore. It was about protecting the child. The people who forced her disappearance knew. They used it as leverage. Stay silent, vanish completely, or risk everything being taken, including the baby. I feel a deep, hollow ache open in my chest. She tells me she gave birth under a different name, in a different state. That the child was placed into a closed system she didn't control. That she wasn't allowed to keep him, wasn't allowed to contact me, wasn't allowed to tell anyone the truth. Every attempt she made was shut down. Before it could reach daylight, my hands shake. As I flip through the rest of the folder, medical records, legal. Documents.photographs. A man in his early 40s stares back at me from one of the pages. My eyes lock onto his face, and something primal stirs inside me. The resemblance is undeniable. The same eyes, the same structure, the same quiet intensity I see when I look in the mirror. My son. A son I never knew existed. A son I never held, never raised, never protected. The weight of it presses down on me, so suddenly I have to sit back. My breath shallow, my vision blurring. I had believed my greatest loss was losing my wife. I was wrong. That loss pales in comparison to this. I found him, she says softly. I look up sharply. He doesn't know who you are, she adds quickly. He doesn't know I'm his mother. He was raised believing a different story. I didn't come back to destroy his life. Or yours. I close my eyes. A lifetime of moments flashes through my mind. Every time I thought my family was complete. Every time I told myself I had accepted the things I couldn't change. All lies, all built on missing information. Why tell me now? I ask, my voice hoarse, her eyes glisten. Because he's sick, she says. And because he deserves the truth before it's too late. The words hit harder than anything she said so far. I look back at the photo, tracing the edge of the page with trembling fingers. Somewhere out there is a man who carries my blood, my features, my history, living a life I was erased from. And now, at the end of my own life, the universe has decided to return everything. I lost all at once, not gently, not kindly, but with brutal honesty. I realize then that this wasn't just a reunion, it was a reckoning, and whatever comes next will demand more from me than I ever thought I had left to give. I sit in that chair long after the words have finished echoing in the room. The folder remains open on the table, the photograph still visible, as if the past refuses to let me look away. My hands rest on my knees, steady on the outside, but inside, something fundamental has shifted. It feels like the ground beneath my entire life has quietly collapsed, revealing a truth that was always there, waiting patiently for me to be old enough to survive it. For 42 years, I believed my pain had a name. I called it abandonment. I called it betrayal. I told myself that accepting those words was the only way forward. But now, sitting here at 73, I realize my pain was never that simple. It was absence without explanation, loss without consent, a life shaped by decisions I was never allowed to be part of. And that understanding cuts deeper than anger ever could. I look at her again. The woman I once loved. The woman I spent decades trying to forget without ever truly succeeding. I don't see an enemy anymore. I see someone who lived under fear so heavy it rewrote her entire existence. That doesn't erase what I lost, but it explains it. And sometimes, explanation is the only form of peace we're ever given. When she tells me where my son is, my chest tightens in a way I've never experienced. A hospital. A word that carries its own kind of gravity. I imagine all the moments I missed: his first steps, his school days, the quiet disappointments and small victories that shape a man. I imagine him growing strong without knowing where his strength came from. And I feel grief not just for what was taken from me, but for what was taken from him. I don't ask why life waited this long. I don't curse fate or timing. I've lived long enough to know that bitterness only poisons the years you still have left. Instead, I ask myself one simple question: what do I do now, knowing what I know? The answer arrives quietly, without drama. I show up. When I walk into that hospital room days later, my heart pounds harder than it did the day I watched my children be born. I expect fear. I expect resistance. What I don't expect is familiarity. Something unspoken passes between us as our eyes meet. No words yet. No labels. Just recognition. Not logical. Not explainable. But real. I sit beside him. I listen more than I speak. I learn who he is before I ever tell him who I am. I watch the way he thinks, the way he pauses before answering questions, the way he carries himself. And in those small details, I see echoes of myself. Not enough to overwhelm him. Just enough to remind me that blood carries memory in ways science will never fully understand. I don't reveal the truth all at once. Truth is not a weapon to be dropped from a height. It is something earned, shared, and respected. When I finally tell him, it's not with demands or expectations. It's with humility, with honesty, with the acknowledgement that time stole something from both of us. He doesn't react the way movies promise people will. There is no dramatic collapse, no shouting, no instant forgiveness. Instead, there is silence, thought, processing, and that silence feels right. Healing isn't loud. It's careful. Later, when I'm alone again, I think about the strange mercy of life. How it can wound you deeply, then offer you a chance to understand that wound when you least expect it. I think about the years I spent believing strength meant enduring quietly. Now I know strength also means allowing yourself to feel the full weight of truth without running from it. My wife leaves again. Not as someone disappearing, but as someone stepping aside. There is no bitterness in her departure, just finality. Some people are meant to be chapters, not endings. And accepting that truth is its own form of forgiveness. As the door closes behind her, I don't feel empty. I feel altered. Like a man who finally understands the shape of his own life. It wasn't smaller than I thought. It was larger, messier, more complicated, and more meaningful. I don't know how much time I have left. None of us ever truly do. But I know this. I will not spend what remains living inside a lie. I will be present. I will be honest. I will show up for the truth. No matter how uncomfortable it is, because the greatest tragedy of my life wasn't that my wife disappeared. It was that the truth did. And the greatest redemption isn't getting the past back. It's choosing to live fully once the truth finally finds you. At 73 years old, I've learned this. Life doesn't wait for you to be ready for the truth. But when the truth arrives, it gives you one last chance to live with integrity. And this time, I won't waste it.